Today at the range, we're going to be testing out some different 22 weapons and 22 caliber accessories. Now you might think that this is not super useful because it's just so weak and puny, but it has certain valuable uses in small packages, but it's also good for testing out other concepts. So, a few videos ago, we talked about the future of the fighting handgun, things that a more modern pistol might do if it was designed for particular duty use, and it would take advantage of things like being a better suppressor host, supporting optics a little better, stuff like that. Now, 22 is not a fighting handgun round or a fighting round at all. As you can see, a 22 long rifle just has so much less power and so much less mass than even your 9mm here. Ballistics aside, everything that we talked about in that video is something that we can experiment with the 22 pistols that we have on the table today. This is the Ruger Mark IV. It's classic, but it's a great suppressor host, and it has a non-reciprocating red dot, just like we talked about. And when it comes to PDWs right here, we have the MP7 at home. As a lot of people are building these days. So this right here is from Kel-Tec. As you can probably tell by the waffle grip and various other Kel-Tec characteristics. But here we have something that is chambered in a 22 long rifle, and it gives us a number of different features that we can experiment with. The first is we have our folding stock from FarrowTech. We're able to put a non-reciprocating red dot on this light rail here. We've also extended this, and it's a fantastic suppressor host. So we can experiment with some PDW characteristics, optical heights. We can mess with ergonomics and do a bunch of different stuff with this platform, even though, again, it's 22 long rifle, not the 4.6 or 5.7 that people particularly are looking for. So this FarrowTech adapter is really clever here. I love how these tubes of carbon fiber hold the brace and are really easily adjustable and lock into place, and it just replaces the back here. Now, unfortunately, there's a couple of issues. One of them is that your charging handle is really close to this uppermost one, but this is a nice height for a cheek rest, and if your optic is high enough, that works really well. Unfortunately, it's not quite high enough. It's kind of hard to get to the safety when your brace is in pistol format, but obviously once it's out of the way, there's no issues with the safety. Now, FarrowTech does have an improved version of this. It's much more complicated than just this simple adapter that sits at the back. He has an entire riser that fully encapsulates this whole thing, brings your optics to a good height, brings your cheek weld to a good height, moves everything out of the way, and even replaces this charging handle, which is a little bit hard to get to where everything is right now. That is a kit that is $300 or $400 depending on the version that you get. It gives you proper QD mounts, it gives you proper Picatinny, it gives you some extra stuff on the side, and he even makes magazine plates that extend this magazine right here, which, believe it or not, is 33 rounds flush with the bottom and takes it up to 50 with just, you know, that classic MP7 extension right there. So right off of the bat, you can see that there's a bunch of third-party guys experimenting with these small pistols and building out systems that, you know, even if they're still chambered in 22 long rifle, are really capable in other ways, and a fantastic platform for experimenting with use case, carry, ergonomics, and accessory mounting. So you may be asking yourself why I don't have an extended safety. I'm asking myself that right now. No, you're asking yourself, why do we have this mini ACOG on this tiny gun right here? Because A, it costs more than almost everything here. This might tip the balance. This is the IR version, and so this is a little more expensive, but it's fairly expensive, it is fairly heavy, and it has 2-power magnification. You might wonder why we're doing 2-power magnification on 22 caliber bullets, which don't have very much power and don't go very far. And the reason for that is this is set up to shoot really tiny things that are not too far away. And also, it's a good place to talk about the bend-in aiming concept that kind of goes around the ACOG. If you are aware of the ACOG, which is normally 4-power zoom, the idea is that you use both eyes open, and one eye sees the magnified image in the dot, and the other eye sees everything else. And your brain kind of brings them together. But that's pretty much dependent on your actual brain. My actual brain is just on the edge of being able to figure that out at 4-power. But at 2-power, it works perfectly. And at 3-power, it's pretty good too. But this is a 2-power optic, and as I scan, my brain automatically focuses on my left eye because there's more movement in the scope and I can see what's going on around me as I move, but I can still see the dot through my right eye. And then once I stop moving, my brain automatically kind of focuses on that right eye because I'm right eye dominant, and I still have the left eye for my peripheral vision. So it is a fantastic concept for guys with slower brains like me once you bring the magnification down a bit, and this is a fantastic optic for this gun, even though it is ridiculously mismatched in other practical ways. But again, we're not shooting super far. The 223 ballistic data that's in the reticle of this ACOG is not applicable to the 22 bullets. But if we're shooting small stuff up close, you know, we're shooting squirrels, we're shooting rats, we're shooting skunks. Skunks are not that small, but the area of the skunk that you want to shoot is really small. This becomes a really cool package for that kind of thing, and it packs into a relatively small space. But the other thing that we talked about in that Future of the Fighting Handgun video is how to get stuff even smaller. This right here is one of the smallest 22 pistols that you would actually want to use for stuff. This is Beretta. There's a Taurus knockoff of this, but the Beretta is pretty easy to find with the threaded barrel, and one of the great things about 22 is how well it suppresses, how easily it suppresses, how quiet it actually gets once you put a can on there. Now, the problem is if I want the smallest possible package here, the smallest suppressor that I own is this Kel-Tec Aurora 2. Which is a suppressor that does not have baffles inside. It has wipes, rubber, or rather polyurethane wipes, which are a consumable item. They have to be replaced. The ATF has conflicting opinions on what that actually means or looks like or requires in the way of paperwork. But the other issue is I've never actually heard of anybody shooting 22 caliber bullets through these wipes. So it's very possible that today we're going to be the first person to actually try to do this. If we screw this end cap off here, you can tap out the stack of heavily greased wipes. You can see there's an aluminum spacer and then 2 of these 1/8" wipes together. Now they've been pre-scored so the bullet can easily push through there. And the advantage of this particular type of suppressor is that it has the ability to just be loaded with a chemical and like Vaseline or wire pulling gel so that you can run this thing wet. The advantage of the wipes is it keeps this thing sealed up with the goop inside for months and months at a time. The disadvantage is that it's a little messy if you try to demonstrate it on camera, and there's certain types of ammo you cannot shoot through it. These wipes don't like hollow points, so we should use standard ball. And then the other one is, does 22 even have the energy necessary to make it through all of those admittedly pre-scored polyurethane wipes? I'm slightly hesitant. Don't worry, this is 100% safe because I'm wearing a glove on this hand. Seems like it's working. Seems like accuracy is not too badly affected by the wipes. But reliability may have some issues. Now, that's probably not the wipes. We've had some reliability issues with this particular pistol and cans in general. The issue with the feeding is partially caused by the mag, I think. Suppressor is slowing things down or speeding things up to the point that it's not working perfectly with the mag, but let's just clear it here and say this thing is warm but totally touchable. And let's have a look at these wipes. Well, you can see that we've captured a lot of gunk, smoke, carbon, probably bits of lead there on my finger, but the wipes themselves actually look like they're in great shape. This thing should be good to run a couple of mags of 9mm through. It wouldn't surprise me if you could run a lot more 22 through. I suppose I should take it apart and look at all of the washers, but it's kind of not what this video is about. You just watched the very first shots of 22 through this suppressor on YouTube. Probably. Actually, now in the comments there's going to be 50 people linking to different videos that I didn't see, so yeah. But once you have this package all together, you have 8 or 9 rounds of 22 that are probably going to fire, and a really tiny package. But you don't have any of the modern features that we talked about in the video. You don't have the ability to run a non-reciprocating red dot or even a light. Okay, so this next bit YouTube doesn't want to watch, so just like look over there for a second while I just do something real quick. Just, you know, just look over there, it'll be fine. YouTube doesn't want to see this bit, but YouTube is totally okay with this bit. So this is a way to run a red dot and a light on this little tiny gun. And if you want to strip down the package and, you know, just be able to have these two pieces separate in your bag, you can totally do that. Now, obviously, there is a bit of a downside to running stuff directly on the can. One of them is heat. The other is that this is not the best possible way to get your red dot perfectly lined up with your barrel. Now, you're not getting a ton of accuracy out of this tiny barrel, and you're not getting a ton of accuracy once you push little tiny 22 bullets through 8 polyurethane wipes. But you know what? It's kind of a cool concept, and if you tighten this thing down enough, it's relatively rigid. So yeah, I'm gonna call this a win somehow. So yeah, it's we'll call it a proof of concept, but it's not that important because we can already test other concepts with other tried and tested pistols. This is the Ruger Mark IV. Everybody should own one of these because it is one of the quintessential 22 pistols, and it's really easy to put a non-reciprocating red dot on it because it has its own pick rail. You can run a light, and it's a great suppressor host. This, by the way, is the very, very lightweight carbon fiber suppressor from Chaos Group Systems, the Siren. I've had this thing for a long time. It's one of my favorite suppressors. And this right here is the silenced pistol that I usually do silenced pistol stuff with. And it's, like I said, it's a classic. And it is designed to feel like a real gun, specifically the 1911. It has 1911 grip angle and grip size, and the controls are all in the same places. But despite how big and heavy it is, it still runs only 8 rounds in the magazine, same magazine capacity as this little guy. So what I would really like to see is something that is like maybe halfway in between these two. And fortunately, that actually exists. This here is the P17. It is from Kel-Tec, just like our MP7 at home, CP33, and it is even smaller and lighter, which I wouldn't have thought possible. So this right here is something that is, well, it is kind of halfway in between these two. It actually weighs almost exactly the same as this because there's way more plastic and less metal in this build. The controls are slightly better all the way around because instead of this janky, not quite heel release, not quite available mag release back here, yeah, mags are an issue with this. Mags with this one are very simple. We have our trigger guard paddle release, which, you know, I think is fine for this particular type of pistol. And all of your other capabilities are here. You can hold the slide open and you can drop it, and you have an external safety, and it feels like it's kind of a real gun, but it also feels very scaled down compared to the Ruger because it is running smaller, slimmer mags. It's as small as it probably could be. That being said, The mags don't hold 8 rounds, they hold 17 rounds. So you actually have something that is more like the capabilities of an actual fighting pistol in the size scale that you would expect from something that shoots teeny tiny 22. So I do like this thing, but it does have a couple of issues that you should know about. One of them is the magazine is sort of hard to load. Most of the other pistol mags that we have on the table here have a follower that you can move with your thumb that makes it way easier to load. So even the little Beretta, you can kind of grab this with your thumbnail. The classic Ruger magazines have this, and a lot of people will 3D print a little thing so that it's easier to grab that and then just feed rounds in at the top. So these Kel-Tec rounds, which are made out of injection molded plastic, unsurprisingly, you pretty much just have to feed all the rounds in from the top with no assist, which is fine for larger calibers, but for 22, that's not great, especially when you can fit 17 of these into all of them. And I feel like even as great as this magazine capacity is compared to the others, it could be more, because this right here is the 33 round mag from the CP33. And yeah, there's definitely room for this inside a comfortable miniature pistol. You know, maybe cut it back to 25 or so with a shorter one, but there's definitely some interesting technology going on here. The CP33 magazine, you can see, is a quad stack magazine. It has 2 columns of double stack 22, and this is an extremely reliable magazine if you load it properly. Now, there are speed loaders that will help you with that loading process so that they don't get jammed up inside of here. But once this thing is loaded, you have 33 rounds, or if you get the big ones, 50 rounds of 22, and they run even smoother, in my experience, than my really nice single stack classic Ruger mag. So I think that there is a little bit of room for improvement on the P17 magazine. As we can see from the CP33, just a little bit more effort, a little bit more capability. And if you compare it to a Glock 19 magazine, you can see that we're getting twice as many bullets in roughly the same shape and size, except for this little rail here. This rail is entirely unnecessary. It is just part of the feed mechanism. You could pack a lot of 22 rounds in a very small space, and then you could fire all of them from a very small platform, and it's really satisfying to do so. So with the carbon fiber siren on the end, this thing weighs almost nothing. It almost doubles in weight once we get a full magazine in there. And let's try the trigger. Trigger is not amazing, but it does have the manual safety. Take the safety off, the trigger improves quite a bit, and you get yourself a fair amount of rapid fire capability. But you also get something really interesting that I have never experienced in a pistol before like this. I am getting gas blowback that feels a little bit like, just a tiny bit like an AR-15, and it's coming back through this right here. I think that there is just, it's because 22 is so dirty. There's just a lot more little bits of powder. So it helps me remember to keep my safety glasses on, as you guys have commented in the past, to actually shoot that thing. Because yeah, it's just a little bit dirty, which brings me to my final verdict on this gun. It's 200 bucks. And that makes it a really interesting proposition. For a little bit more money, I would say that it feels too cheap. One of the issues with this gun, I have to actually say, in the interest of full disclosure, Kel-Tec sent me this gun, not as a present and not to review. They loaned me this gun because it is out of stock almost everywhere. A $200 22 pistol that is small, that is light, that has a decent magazine capacity, appears to be in relatively high demand. So I wanted to work on this video, and I asked them very specifically if they were making these things and if they had any lying around, and they graciously sent me one. And you can put a red dot on the top, and it has a light rail, so you can run a compact light on the bottom. But remember, we wanted to do more than just that. We wanted to experiment with some more cyberpunk style futuristic fighting pistol modifications. once again, I'm gonna have to just, look away, because YouTube is very squeamish. They don't like to see this part, but they're okay with this part when the modification is already done. This right here is a little mount that gives us a non-reciprocating red dot. So as I charge the weapon, you can see that it goes into battery just fine, and the red dot doesn't move. And we've had to drop our light down just a little bit, but I actually kind of like the ergonomics of where these lower thumb buttons ended up. This actually works really well with this particular grip. Now, I should state that this mount is made out of plastic, and in order for this to work, I had to remove the front sight because this is how the slide operates. That's why I was missing earlier, just the lack of a front sight, that's all. But now we have an actual dot, so we can do some actual accurate firing. We have chambered around, and let's see how we can do with sights. With sights. It could be that this particular plastic sight here with the hand-drilled mounting holes is slightly off. All right, so I've figured out my holds. There isn't quite enough adjustment in this little Holosun sight based on the 3D printed plastic, but it's an easy problem to fix in the next revision. Apart from that, it actually is holding pretty well where I actually aim it, if you take the offset into account. I'm slightly disappointed that we didn't test the red dot off camera before we actually shot this video, but I have to say that I am pretty impressed with the P17. It's been shooting well. When it had sights on it, it was really easy to point and to shoot. It suppresses well. It's a fantastic suppressor host. And the other thing that I like about it is that it is extremely affordable and it is extremely slim. It feels like it's built around the size of 22 with a lot of modern characteristics and only minor improvements and tweaks that need to be done. But I do think that there is room for somebody to make a slightly more expensive 22. This is the Taurus TX22. And the reason that I built around the P17 is it's just a slimmer and lighter gun. Even with our janky modular optic and light mount, we're about the same width as the TX22. Now the fun thing with 22 is because it is so small and because it is so low power, it's really easy to make firearms for it. For example, Walther, that makes really capable, I would say duty grade firearms and really great precision firearms for match work and things like that. They also make a 22 pistol. But believe it or not, that is owned by Umarex, which is an airsoft company that is attached to Walther. And so apparently 22 pistols are closer to airsoft than to actual firearms. And if you pick up the Kel-Tec P17, you would certainly get that feeling. Now 22 has a lot of value besides just being easy to make low-cost firearms for. It is a great place for experimenting with different capabilities, different form factors, but it also has a lot of other value. I would not recommend it as a fighting handgun or a self-defense handgun unless maybe for some reason something like this little Bobcat is truly the only thing you can carry. This would be better than nothing. And I actually haven't tried it unsuppressed, but I am willing to bet that this thing runs flawlessly without the suppressor, even with 8 rounds of ammunition. If for some reason you want a small, fixed barrel, hammer-fired gun with an external safety, and this is all that you possibly could carry, yes, it's better than nothing. But 22 has other uses. As we said before, there are occasionally small targets that you want to hit: rats, squirrels, various types of varmints. There's also, light switches, lights, motion detectors, cameras, I don't know, just stuff like that that is really easy to hit with a tiny, quiet 22. Makes it an interesting utility round, and it just has a whole bunch of really fantastic capabilities. This, for example, is A Ruger 1022, another iconic gun, incredibly common as the Ruger Mark IV pistol here. And there's just all kinds of third-party accessories, magazines, and it's available in a bunch of different setups. This right here is the break barrel version, and so you can really easily put this in an incredibly small bag if you are backpacking or camping. And once you have it together, you have an incredibly capable package. With this thermal scope from AGM and then this suppressor, which is from Griffin, you have an incredibly capable little camp rifle, the Critter Getter 2000. I believe this thing is called. So there's all kinds of things that you can do with 22 that has a utility purpose. But there's something else even on top of that. 22 is so cheap and easy to shoot that it has a training aid, even for guys who train with regular stuff. But it's even better for people who are new to firearms. There is nothing so accessible and non-threatening and confidence building as shooting suppressed 22 for people who are new to firearms, whether they are full-size adults or whether they are kids. If you're teaching kids firearm safety and marksmanship and basic principles, 22 is a fantastic platform to go. And if you're teaching adults who are new to firearms and a little bit nervous about things that go bang, it is just really hard to beat buying a huge box of 22 for very little and then going out to the range and firing something that is comfortable, that is safe, and that can be made relatively quiet. It is just a fantastic introduction to shooting and shooting sports. So everybody should really own, in my opinion, a Ruger 1022 in some configuration. It doesn't need to be, you know, quite as tactical as this one, but it's something that everybody should have. And a Ruger Mark IV, I was going to say, is another just no-brainer. Everybody has to own one. Except that there are starting to be some other small, capable 22 pistols that are worth having. And I believe that there is room for us to design a new one, something that is just a little bit above, just a couple of steps above that Kel-Tec P17, that is designed to be a little bit more forgiving, a little bit better of a suppressor host, a little bit more capture of the grit that comes back, just be a little bit more polished of an experience. And then, you know, attachments, there's a lot of stuff that you could do with that one. So we started this video wanting to validate some of the concepts from this weapon design from the previous video with some 22 stuff, but now I'm actually back where we started. I kind of want to make a new 22 pistol design because this pistol, along with some others, has given me some ideas. This right here is a mock-up of a 22 magazine, very much like this one, 16 rounds, double stack, but it actually has a little follower that you can grab. And if you compare that to a Glock magazine, you can see just how much tinier that is. And when you have something that's that small, you can build something sort of interesting around it. So this is a very basic 22. Again, 22 caliber pistols can be really simple because you don't need any complex recoil management system and you don't need delayed blowback. Just regular blowback with not too much weight is all that you need for 22. But now that we build a little bit of a framework, say, around this pistol, there's a couple things that I would like to tinker with. And one is have a grip that is really tiny around that really tiny magazine. So this right here is not the world's most comfortable grip, but it's round, it's slim, a small child can use it, and then there's lots of additional grip modules that you could add. This gives you more of a 1911 vertical grip shape, and then this right here goes over the top and gives you your Glock 19. Now, because it adds so much to the front, you also need a trigger extension, but the way that this is designed, you can do that relatively easily, and now you have something that feels like a Glock 19. Now, the way that most pistols do this today is with a back strap, adding extra meat on the back of the grip. And here you can see we've done that on the front. It does make this trigger bit a little bit more complicated, but it has some other advantages. Specifically, the further back we put that 22 caliber magazine, the further back we can bring the barrel as we feed it. So now we have an extra ½ inch of barrel length and all of this adjustability. So the ability to get exactly the grip that you are looking for on a low-cost firearm, emulate other firearms, experiment with stipple, various other things, and, you know, keep your 3D printer busy making things that are not specific firearms or firearm parts is kind of a cool thing. Being able to 3D print stuff like this and experiment with it for various mounting purposes is a little on the janky side, but again, 22 is not that powerful, and so it works really well. Being able to use the light to clamp on worked even better than I thought. Mounting the optics worked not quite as well as I thought, but it is a fantastic way to experiment with this stuff. That said, 22 caliber, despite being not super powerful in the short or long rifle configurations, is still fairly dangerous. And even though it's not going to be your first choice defensively or offensively, I want to link to a video made by 9-Hole Reviews where they talk about some defensive and offensive use of 22 caliber pistols by counterterrorism guys in Israel, of course. And that makes me think that there are still a lot of utility within this round. And it makes me even more eager to have something like this. A very small, very compact, very pocketable, but very extendable 22 caliber pistol, maybe made to just, I don't know, $100 more premium than the Kel-Tec P17. And that is the end of the video. There's certainly nothing else after the logo. Well, thanks for watching the video, and the video is now over, and hopefully the Google algorithm isn't listening super closely because I want to talk about something that I want to do next. It's probably not what you think. It's not going to be comparing real PDWs to toy PDWs. I actually want to spend a little bit more time with this thing right here. Yes, this configuration is a nice little suppressed pocket pistol. It's handy for retiring replicants, but there's some other interesting things about the can specifically. If you know anything about the Gemtech Aurora, you know that it was originally designed as an emergency can for fighter pilots so that they would be able to suppress whatever sidearm they had with them and use it for escape and evasion and survival and stuff like that. And it's threaded for this particular thread pitch on one side, and it's threaded for this other European thread pitch left hand on the other side, which gives it a lot of versatility. And in addition to working really well for 22 caliber bullets, as we tested on the range today, it's also pretty good for 9mm. But I want to do a little bit more experimentation with the actual washers themselves, or the wipes rather. I want to do some experiments and figure out how quickly they actually wear out and figure out what we can be doing with different things. The 22 that we used has done surprisingly little to this first one, and it's extremely dirty, but it isn't showing a whole lot of wear. Inside of the Griffin can, we have a wipe that has seen a lot more particular firing, and you can see that it's got a lot more wear to it. So in this case, we're talking about a can that has traditional baffles, and the wipe is just the very last step to capture a little bit more material towards the end. Whereas with this one, we have nothing but wipes. And because of that, it is a multi-caliber can, and it does work really well with wet materials. It runs well wet, and it just takes up an incredibly small amount of space. And it works well for, you know, those emergency kind of situations. So we should do some more experiments with that suppressor. The problem is I don't know where to do those experiments, or at least where to publish the results. It is very silly that this little piece of rubber, which only lasts for a certain number of shots, is considered by many people, the ATF occasionally, and places like YouTube always, to be a suppressor part, something that shouldn't be messed around with. Which is a shame, because I think there is a lot of fascinating experiments that one could do with these little cans, and while they are a disposable part, they are incredibly effective in such a small and lightweight space. And for emergency escape purposes or others, it's just really cool to have something that is so light that it runs without a booster, is really small, and lasts for a couple of mags. Yeah, it's just a fascinating platform that could do with considerably more experimentation if only, you know, we were allowed to do that.